thank you all for coming out Sunday night. Spanish Fork, Utah. For comments, correspondence, and feedback, this is our email address, utahchristians@gmail. We have our website, utahchristians.org. There's also another very good informational website. It's called www.krishna.com, krshna.com. Everything is inspired by the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the founder of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Om Bhagavatam-nasya, Bhagavatam-salakya, Tatsuvedi-Tamyanatashna, Sri-Vedana, Sri-Chaitanya-Vistam, Stapitam-Yavutare, Sahayam-Rupa-Kadamya, Tadati-Svalam-Vitam. Today our topic is change from within. Have you ever read, and I'm sure you have, they're the best-selling books out there, a self-help book. You got inspired to turn over a new leaf, to fix one or two things that you need fixing in your life. You say to yourself, I'm going to try to be more friendly, more loving, more kind, or I'm going to try not to spend so much money, or to use credit cards, or to get into debt. I'm not going to manipulate people anymore. I'm not going to get angry and upset. And it's good that you're trying to improve. But so often, these changes are temporary because we're not getting to the root cause of the problem. No matter how much you want to be better, the issue keeps coming back. You can't seem to quite break free of it. You'll do really well for 2 or 3 days, maybe a week or two, and then circumstances will hit you from left field. A curveball will come across the plate, and your problems come creaking back. All your resolve crumbles like a house of cards. You find yourself short with people again. You're tempted to spend money to dull the pain by going out on a credit card spending fee. You find yourself all angry, upset, pretty much right back where you started a week ago. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Why couldn't the change have been more lasting? And the answer is, you're not dealing with the root cause. In a morning walk conversation in Frankfurt, Germany, with Professor Durkheim, Prabhupada, our spiritual master, said, the aim of life is God realization, but people don't know that. They're thinking by these external features of the material world, they'll be happy. That by constructing a big, high skyscraper building, by adjusting the material circumstances, by so-called advancement of civilization, they'll be happy. But they'll never be happy because the simple fact is they don't know what the aim of life is, which is to understand God. Utopian hope of happiness in this world will never be fulfilled. The leaders, the so-called scientists, technologists, philosophers, and politicians, Natevidu Shvartaditim Hi Vishnu, they are unaware of the fact that the goal of life is to realize Vishnu or God. Andaya Tandaya Mira. Does that also sound familiar or striking any familiar chords? The leaders are blind men. She used to be a lot worse, I'll tell you, before she started coming. Blind, leading blind. What happens if one blind man leads blind man? One blind man says, hey, come on, you 100, you 1,000, you nation. What, 25 million? Follow me, I know the answer. He doesn't know the answer. He can't even get his own life together. And he's going to make life better for 25 million people? Come on. Come on. Blind man leading a blind man. And we see it repeated all over the world, in every culture, in every society, in every area of influence. And Prabhupada goes on to say, the root cause of suffering is forgetfulness of God. Because they've forgotten from whom we come and for what purpose we're created. We are obviously suffering. Makes all the sense in the world. To me, I don't know about you. So this Krishna consciousness, and Krishna is our name for God, movement is trying to treat the patient the sick, suffering, miserable patient, treat him from the root cause. Let them remember God, Prabhupada says, then they'll be happy and whole. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Quick illustrative story. A man's horse one day kicked a wooden fence, scraped his leg badly. The owner cleaned the wound, bandaged their leg, and a few weeks later, the man noticed that the horse was still limping, still bothered by that wound. He called a veterinarian in to examine the horse, and the vet prescribed some antibiotics. As soon as his horse started to take the antibiotics, he responded. Began to do much better. A month or so went by, however, and the owner noticed that the injury still had not healed. It actually appeared to have gotten worse. So the vet put the horse back on antibiotics. Once again, the animal was fine for a few weeks, but the process repeated itself. The wound simply would not heal. Finally, the owner put the horse into the trailer, took him to the veterinarian's office. The veterinarian put the horse to sleep, and they began to probe deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the injured leg. And once they got deep enough, the vet, of course, discovered a large sliver of wood that had gotten below the skin when the horse had hit the fence many months previously. The vet realized that every time the horse went off the antibiotics, the infection caused by that foreign object still being in there returned. They'd been treating the symptoms rather than treating the true source of the horse's infection. In the same way, most people never really look inside themselves. Most people never really get honest with themselves. Don't get down to the root of the problem. They simply deal with the surface. They may be negative. They may have problems getting along in relationships. Perhaps they have low self-esteem, severe financial issues, some other chronic problem. And they want to improve their behavior, and that's good, but almost always the results are temporary because they refuse to deal with the root, and the permanent changes they hope for never manifest. And thus you go around and around and around, as it were, spinning your wheels in the same place. We have a lot of thistles. It's pretty much epidemic all over Utah County, that especially in the hot summer months when the other grass is yellow and dry and wither, the thistles, they seem to thrive. That seems to be their time. They don't seem to need water or rainfall or mist. They're an extremely hardy plant. They thrive in the harsh, intense heat. They can do without water. And the reason is their roots go deep into the ground. When we're mowing grass, we always run over them and we cut them down to ground level again. But when you go back to mow 2 or 3 weeks later, lo and behold, they've sprung back up again, twice as thick as they were before. Unless you bring your shovel and dig them out by the roots, they're just going to keep coming back and back and back and back. Similarly, if you want lasting, positive change in your life, you have to go deeper, have to inquire as to the root cause of the problem. Why do I feel this way? Why am I out of control in this area? Why am I always so defensive? Why do I feel that I must repeatedly prove myself to everybody? Only as you start dealing with the root cause of the problem can you realistically expect lasting positive changes. We should examine the areas in which we struggle. Is your spouse really at fault? If you look at the circumstances, you might find that the trouble's more with you than it is with your spouse. Was it really my circumstances? Is it really my upbringing, the dysfunctional family that I grew up in? Is that really what's holding me back? Or could it be there's something deep within myself that's causing me to be infected? And a lot of us, we've had troubled relationships in the past. There's not a single one of us probably who hasn't experienced rejection, derision, betrayal, sometimes by those who are really, really close to us. It's painful, hard to let go. Someone did you wrong. We hold on to it, rehearse it over and over and over again. It might have happened a month ago, a year ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. We can't let go of it, and it tends to poison our future relationships. There's an exercise sometimes in our yoga classes that we ask people to do in the Festival College. We also have yoga here Monday through Thursday evenings at 6:45. You can see the pose here on the screen. Stretching your arms up high and behind, arching your back, taking a deep breath and pushing your heart forward. And then you make an affirmation. Going forward, I resolve in relationships. Because the tendency is when you get hurt, you pull back, you recoil. Once burned, twice shot. But this pose is indicative of an affirmation that no matter how I might have been hurt or betrayed or dealt with unfairly, I'm still going to have the courage to move forward, to forge new relationships, to be a better version of myself. And I don't really care how many times I may have been hurt in the past. It doesn't matter what's happened in the past. What really matters is what's out there in the front. That kind of heroism and courage, we need those in relationships in order to have a successful life. I also know people who have a deep, deep-rooted sense of insecurity. They're always defensive, always trying to prove to somebody else who they really are. And as long as they have that bad root, they're going to produce the wrong kind of fruit. So often, we can't seem to get along with a particular person, and we're absolutely sure they need to change in this way, they need to alter their behavior. It's his or her fault. It's our spouse, it's our boss, it's our co-workers, it's the Democrats, it's the Republicans, it's the immigrants. But wait, maybe the problem is a little closer to home. Maybe I'm the problem. Could there be a root of pride deep inside me that's causing me to withhold forgiveness, to be judgmental, to be blinding me to someone else's insights? You know, you can try to deal and correct with all these things on the surface, but that's just like putting a fresh bandage on a horse's leg. Problem will keep coming back over and over again until we get to the real source. In a room conversation one time with a psychiatrist, Prabhupada commented on our obsession with this external material body. Quote, he said, you as a society, once the body is declared as dead, medically speaking, you don't care for it anymore. When the body's alive, we preen it, we do Botox, we do liposuction, we do tummy tucks, we exercise, we try to eat right. But as soon as the body is no longer deemed to be alive, then we really can't wait to dispose of it by burning and burying or cremation. Prabhupada says, why is that? Why is the body so worthy of care and attention and expense when it's alive, and exactly the opposite when it's dead? And Prabhupada said, it's because the driver, death means the soul, the driver is gone. And of what use is a car with no driver? What's the sense in taking care of the car when there's no driver? Well, we're only concerned as a society with this physical external body. The root cause of our problem is we don't know who we are. We're not taking care of the driver, we're only taking care of the car. I heard about a British author, famous blogger. He finished a tour of America and he described one point of irony that he noticed in America. He came to this house. He'd been referred to somebody. Big American house, Cedar Hills, Elk Ridge, whatever, Alpine, right on a hill with 2 cars in the garage, a beautiful living room with expensive furniture, big, massive TV set on the wall, kitchen filled with all the latest gadgets, a large pool and beautiful patio, a barbecue, a veranda, gazebo. In all of that, the lady of the house was sitting alone, all by herself, in a very despondent mood, with a book in her lap called How to Be Happy. America. Portrait of America. So in your life, you might have been stuck in one place for too long. You feel like you're not moving forward. You're not where you should be at this time of your life. And as a result, you may have become sour. Your marriage may have become sour. You've lost your zest by going to the job every Monday morning. You're over your head in debt. Maybe you've also gotten harder to get along with. You've gotten defensive on the one hand, and then aggressive, critical, and judgmental on the other hand. If any of that rings a bell, I have a suggestion. Pray. Pray, Lord, please show me the truth about myself. Show me who I really am. Because, Lord, I don't want to be at this same place this time next year. I acknowledge there are things holding me back. And, Lord, I'm praying to you. Show me what they are. Lord, help me to change. Lord, help me to get to the root of my problems. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. There's a song we sing at the Color Festival. Jai Krishna started with just the first verse, and then I added to it. So you might say this is the theme song of our Color Festival. When I look into your eyes, I see a shining soul. When I look into your eyes, I see a spirit soul. See a soul that's never born, a spark that never dies, yearns to fly back home, back to the spiritual skies. From dust you come to dust you go was never spoken of the soul. This body, like a set of clothes, wears out and gets disposed. A flame of light and love gives life to the machine. Candle never snuffed, so sublime, unseen. For the soul there's no beginning, ending there's none. Small in the atom, brighter than the sun. Can you say it with me? When I look into your eyes,
and I look at your eyes,
I see a shining soul.
I see a shining soul.
When I look into your eyes, I see a spirit soul.
I see a spirit soul.
I see a soul that's never born.
I see a soul that's never born.
A spark that never dies.
A spark that never dies.
Yearns to go back home.
That yearns to go back home.
Back to the spiritual skies.
Back to the spiritual skies.
Good job, you guys. So you're here today, and what's happening? Krishna is knocking at the door of your heart. But the door of your heart, the interesting thing about it is the knob is on the inside. It doesn't open out, it opens in. So the question we have to ask ourselves, are we keeping the Lord outside of our hearts? Because we're afraid that in our hearts there are rooms, there are chambers, which might be painful to reveal to him, or which might be embarrassing for he to know about. There are rooms in which hurts, burdens, pains, resentments from the past are stored up. Rooms where your weaknesses and your shortcomings are tucked away. Tonight, our encouragement is maybe it's time to unlock those doors and let the Lord in. Let his light shine into those dark corners. Clean up some of the crud and the garbage that's been stored there for who knows how long. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And we make excuses for our behavior. We blame other people. We blame circumstances. Sometimes we even blame God. Anything to avoid having to root out our own attachments and illusions. Our message today is unlock the door and let the Lord floodlight every room of our heart. When we have these feelings that we know are wrong, rather than hiding them, trying to bury them away in one of these rooms, the best thing we can do is be honest and say, Lord, why do I feel this way? Why do I resent that person? Why can't I get along with my spouse? Why do I try to manipulate everybody that I meet? Lord, why do I have to have my way? Why do I get upset so easily? If you'll be honest, and if you're willing to face your deep-rooted attachments, rather than hiding behind excuses, I promise you, Krishna will show you answers to those questions. And as you begin to act on what it is that Krishna reveals to you, you will come up higher in your life. If you're impatient, for instance, be honest enough to say, Krishna, show me why I'm so impatient, and then help me deal with it. If you feel resentment towards another person, tending to be critical, to find fault, the first thing you should do to pray is, Krishna, please show me why I don't like this person. What's wrong, not with them, but what's wrong inside of me, why I don't like them. Am I jealous of their position, of their money, of their talents? Krishna, show me how my own attachments cloud my vision. Help me not to lose perspective. Help me to see the big picture and not get tripped up over temporary things. I don't want to go around and around and around perpetually. I want to break out of that cycle. I want to come up higher, and ultimately, I yearn to transcend this material world of birth and death. I yearn to go back home, back to the spiritual world. There's a touching scene in the Mahabharata. Yudhishthira has been exiled for 13 years into the forest, and he's feeling a little despondent. So a sage named Somukha Rishi goes, and this is the short description here. He sees Yudhishthira sitting, feeling dejected. He's blaming himself that he and his brothers and wife had been sent to the forest for 13 years because he lost the kingdom because of a gambling addiction that he had. So Sanaka Rishi says, 1,000 causes of grief and 100 causes of fear overwhelm the ignorant by night and by day, but they never overwhelm those who are learned. O king, intelligent men like you can never be cast into illusion. You can never be bewildered by reverses, because you know you are situated firmly ensconced in the realization that I am part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. I know who I am, and I know whose I am. And such a person can never be bewildered by the hot and cold dishonor, happiness, and stress of this material world. So Sanaka Rishi says, bring that wisdom to mind now, Yudhishthira. Put aside this temporary lapse of grief. What he's saying, in essence, is that the root cause of suffering is our attachment to matter. He goes on to give an example. A little tiny fire, a little spark in the hollow of a tree ends up destroying the whole tree from top to bottom. Similarly, even the slightest bit of material attachment can end up ruining, tainting, polluting, burning up the whole future of one's life. And Sanaka says, to the King, one who has renounced attachment, even though living in this world, becomes free from evil passions and the sufferings they produce. The examples of the lotus flower. Underneath that rug, there's a lotus flower. There's a lotus there. This is called the lotus temple. What's the significance of the lotus? It grows within water. It grows within mud. And yet it's always clean, pristine. And even if you splash water on it, the water will bead up and slough off, and a few minutes later, the leaves of the lotus flower will be bone dry. Therefore, it can be said of a lotus, it's in the water, but it's not of the water. Nice metaphor for us. How to navigate the turbulent waters and crises and backstabbing and betrayal of this material world. We need to think of ourselves as being in the material world, but not of the material world. Passing through. And our only purpose in being here is learning valuable lessons about ourselves and our relationship with our Creator. Nothing in this world matters beyond its ability to teach us what we need to know in order to go back to home, back to God. To that end, take inventory. Make sure you're not carrying around excess baggage. Eat that food which honors the Lord. Watch those videos which honor the Lord. Read those books which honor the Lord. And most importantly, keep as your inner circle those people that you spend time with, people that will challenge you, that will bring you up higher, that will help you on your journey back to Godhead. If you have areas in your life, if you have people in your life where it cause you to constantly struggle and that you cannot seem to extricate you from, to not get free from, then you need to pray to Krishna to show you what and who your attachments are, how they're holding you back. Ask him to show you, if you have, and what they are, the bitter roots that you need to get rid of. Here's a really good story in this connection. We're coming to the end here. This is from George Sweeting, preacher. He said, several years ago, our family visited Niagara Falls. It was spring, chunks of ice are rushing down the river. So he stood there and he saw these large chunks of ice flowing towards the falls. And he noticed there were carcasses of dead fish that had been frozen into the blocks of ice. And seagulls were coming down. They were riding down the river, plucking the flesh of the fish through the ice. And as they came to the brink of the falls, of course, their wings would go out and they would lift up as the block of ice went over the falls. But he watched one gull, which delayed a little too long, getting closer and closer, getting that extra little nibble of fish, that extra nibble of fish. It was so engrossed in the carcass of the fish that it didn't notice the impending falls coming up. And when it came to the edge of the falls, almost as an afterthought, he reached out with his powerful wings and he tried for lift up. He flapped and flapped and flapped, and unfortunately he'd stayed too long. His feet had become frozen into the block of ice. He got more and more frantic and more, and he actually succeeded for a few feet in lifting the whole block of ice for a moment out of the water. And the witnesses were in suspense. They thought the gull might actually for a moment escape and fly away with the block of water, but it was not to be, because the weight of the block of ice was too great and the gull plunged into the abyss. What do we learn from this story? The finest morsels, the finest attractions and attachments that this material world has to offer become deadly when we become too attached to them. They take us to our destruction if we cannot learn to give them up. If Krishna brings something vital like this to light in your life, and you have to do your part and be bold enough to deal with it. You can be happier. You can experience permanent change for the better. You can become the men and women of faith that God created you to be. You can have better relationships. You can break free from anything that's holding you back. But you have to do your part. Be honest and face some hard truths about yourself. Open the door to the Lord from the inside. Finishing up here, digging out these attachments can be painful. Some of us have been addicted, entangled, ensnared by material pleasures for not just one lifetime, dozens, hundreds, perhaps thousands. And the easy thing to do is to concentrate on the surface issues, to basically maintain the status quo. Good enough is good enough. The easy thing is to avoid change. There is pain, I'm not going to lie to you, associated with coming up higher. It is uncomfortable, I'm not going to lie to you, to be honest and really deal with these issues. It would be uncomfortable to forgive an offense when it really was the other person's fault. It's hard sometimes to admit to yourself, I'm holding on to my bitterness. Or it's hard to say, I'm hard to get along with because I'm dragging along with me all this baggage from the past. Or it might be painful to say to yourself, yeah, I'm defensive because I'm so insecure. But can I tell you, as you shed these superficial layers and really get honest, you will feel a little pressure, but that pressure is temporary. Think of it as a growing pain. Once you get past a certain point, you're going to taste a new level of victory in your life. The pain of change is a small price to pay for being forever in the pain of mediocrity, of unfulfillment. Maybe you've been spinning your wheels, going around year after year after year in circles. You're not really happy. It's time to be honest and say, Lord, show me what it is. Do I rely on other people to make me happy? Do I have unrealistic expectations? Am I only going to be happy if I get married? Am I allowing my circumstances to keep me down? Krishna, please cut away the root causes of attachment. You may have come out of an abusive situation from your youth. Maybe someone caused you a lot of heartache and pain. Maybe even the people that raised you were unkind. Or somebody with whom you shared a relationship might have abused you. They made poor decisions and now you're dealing with the flack of those decisions. But our encouragement is this afternoon, don't let any of that be an excuse. In spite of that, you can come up higher. You can set a new standard. If you want to get to the source of the problem, you just have to bestir yourself. No longer sit idly and passively by. Come to the point where you say, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I may have been this way for a long time. But I'm not going to dance around the issue anymore. I'm going to get to the source. I'm going to start making better decisions for myself and my family. And if you want to get out of the prison house of this material world and all of its complications and out of the misleading influence of blind leaders everywhere you go, the first thing you have to do is stop making excuses. Quit blaming the past. You may have been through a lot of hardship. There may be reasons why you're struggling with bad habits, reasons why you're struggling in relationships, reasons why you suffer from low self-esteem. There may be reasons, but those should not be excuses to stay where you are. Take responsibility. Many people have unfair things happen. They go through their whole life allowing those experiences to poison them. They're angry. They've got a chip on their shoulder. They're hard to get along with. Well, Caru, you don't know what I've been through. If you'd been through what I've been through, you'd act in the certain way. No. That may be a reason you're that way, but thank God you don't have to stay that way. You can come up higher. You just have to take responsibility. Willing to face the truth and say, this is not the way that God created me to be, to live angry, to live frustrated, to upset, to be hard to get along with Krishna, him into my life. I'm opening the door. Please bring about the changes. If you have that attitude, I can absolutely guarantee you that Krishna will help you. If you have bad habits, if you have insecurities, if you have wrong thinking, it's a matter of being honest enough to deal with it, not make excuses, not blame the past, not blame your parents, not blame the circumstances, not blame your spouse. Why? Because, again, being honest, we can't change any of that, but we can change ourselves. And to be honest with you, as long as we're being really honestly honest, do you know of any family that doesn't have dysfunction? In some way, shape, or form, every family has dysfunction. Anybody could use that as an excuse, but nobody should use dysfunction as an excuse, because we all have to deal with these things, and our becoming better versions of ourselves depends upon our getting past it, overcoming it. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's giving lessons how to become unattached to this material world. And the simple key to become detached from the material world is if you become more attached to Krishna. The more attached you become to God, the more detachment you feel for this material world. It's called param drishta nivartate. Man's been eating old, stale bread. Someone comes along and gives him angel food cake made with egg replacer. He's never going to go back to the old stale bread again. He might not have been able to give up the stale bread because then he would have starved. But when he replaces the stale bread with angel food cake, not the best of analogies from a nutritional point of view, I admit, but he can easily give up the lesser thing when he experiences param vishvananivartate. Similarly, when you get a better engagement, a better attachment, you can leave up the lower engagement, the lower attachment. It is a fact of life. You're living in a dream world if you think you can become free from attachments. We have attachments right, left, and center for our home, for our family, for our children, for our society, for our nation, for our country, on and on and on and on. Attachment is an undeniable fact of life. But if you keep your attachment for these fragmental exhibitions of God's energy, you'll never be free from the conditioning of material life, which translates into birth, death, disease, and old age, birth, death, disease, and old age, birth, death, disease, and old age, repeated ad infinitum. The secret is not to give up attachment, but to divert. Can you say divert? Divert. 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 Divert your attachment. Divert your attachment. To Krishna, or if you prefer to say God. To Krishna. That is the sum and substance of the Krishna consciousness movement. We acknowledge attachment. Attachment is not wrong. But we have got attachment for false, temporary things. And if we divert our attachment for Krishna or God, that is called bhakti. Bhakti does not mean you have to give up your living functions. Attachment is the function of a living being. Attachment to family, friends, children. Because we're living beings, we have these attachments. But if we continue attachments for the false and temporary manifestations of material life, then we'll never be free from material bondage. We have to what? Divert your attachment for Krishna. Yogam Yunyam Manasya. Krishna says, those great saints and sages who have tried to give up attachment have failed. But those who have attachment for me, they all succeeded. They're all singing and dancing right now in the spiritual, eternal kingdom of God. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Bottom line, conclusion, there's no obstacle, no addiction, no betrayal on this planet, in this world, that you cannot, with the help of God, overcome. You can fulfill your God-given destiny. Doesn't matter what your past is. It's what's up in front of you that's important. You can accomplish your dreams. You may have had a negative history, but then who hasn't? Please understand that if you had a negative past, it doesn't mean that you have to have a negative future. What's important is not where you come from, but what matters is where you're going hand in hand with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Like the lotus flower, you are better than your circumstances. And one of the main ways that we can honor God in our lives is by taking responsibility for our actions, not blaming our past, not blaming our circumstances. Dig out the root cause of our attachment so that we don't go through life spinning our wheels. Rise up and do something today. Krishna's knocking. Why don't you open the door? And if you do so, you can experience all the good things that come from God. And I know this evening that if you get to the source of your issues, if you make the small adjustments that Krishna asks, if you uncover the truths about yourself, you will see victory in this life. Next life, you go back to home, back to God. If any of that resonates with you, you're welcome to raise your arms with me, and we can say together loudly, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Thank you all very much. You're such a wonderful audience. I enjoyed the last half hour. I hope you did and learned from it as well. We're going to finish off our program up here with an Arctic ceremony. We invite Nama Mitra to come up and chant. And then, if you have questions, please divert our attention to your table, and we'll be glad to do our best to answer them.
सीताराम लक्ष्मण हनुमान की जय। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम
His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Gauda Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya